Welcome to this, the last of our 5 thematic webinars being held during EU Sustainable Energy Week in 2016. We've been trying to tackle some of the key themes and issues around smart cities and energy efficiency each day. They have been co-organized and hosted by My Smart City District, and we're a group of like-minded smart cities projects representing 25 cities in 13 countries. If you are social media friendly, we've got our Twitter handle and a couple of the relevant hashtags there, and please feel free to echo any insights that you feel might be valuable to anyone else. So today we're tackling the issue of replication at scale. So how do we turn early adoption and subsidized initiatives in energy efficiency and beyond, and turn them into attractive, cost-effective, time-effective mainstream practices? Well, I'm pleased to say that we have a couple of excellent examples from the project sphere in CITYFIED and SINFONIA, and Jeanette Karine from the Swedish Environmental Institute, IVL, and Karine Laffont from Technoffi will be giving us some insight into those. I think they've both been quite exceptional in creating a community or a reach for some of their work, and I think that's interesting to explore. And my apologies for the fault here. We have Mariangiola Fabbri from BPIE speaking to us, and I think BPIE will give us some excellent insight as the Building Performance Institute for Europe about what that means and any trends and insights they have about the projects or about the issue of replication at scale. So with no further ado, I am going to hand over to our first speaker. That's Jeanette Karine, and she's going to give us an insight about the CITYFIED project.
Thank you very much for that, Alec, and hello to all of you listening. My name is Jeanette Karine, and I work at IVL, Swedish Environmental Research Institute. I am the project manager of CITYFIED within my organization, and I also lead the work package in CITYFIED on replication. So shortly about CITYFIED. The aim of CITYFIED is to develop a replicable, systemic and integrated strategy to adapt European cities and urban ecosystems into the smart city of the future. And the core in the CITYFIED project and community are 3 holistic intervention of districts in the cities of Laguna de Duero in Spain, Lund in Sweden, and Soma in Turkey. At those 3 interventions, they are implementing technologies and methodologies for building renovation, smart grid, and district heating networks. The aim of this is, of course, to reduce the energy demand and increase the share of renewable energy sources, and as such, result in an overall reduction of greenhouse gas emissions. The 3 demo sites work with a variety of intervention, addressing all levels from user behavior to large-scale supply of energy to the buildings. Besides the high technological ambitions in the 3 demo sites of CITYFIED, the project also have equally high ambitions when it comes to replication and scaling up of the results of the demo sites. In order to assure this, the project has created a community of 50 cities. The purpose of this community is to assure from the very beginning of the project the replication potential of the CITYFIED results. The community consists of 2 different levels of commitment from the 50 cities. We have the inner circle that we refer to as the CITYFIED city cluster. With them, we have an interactive approach and a high commitment from the cities to supply us with data and commitment. And we also have a second layer that we refer to as the community of interest, representing cities acting as potential replication targets for the project results, benefiting from networking activities and acknowledging the retrofitting methodology implemented in the demo sites. My speech here today will specifically focus on the interactive dimension of the replication scope of CITYFIED and how we strive to maintain the replication potential beyond the scope of the project. So to say, how do we go from 3 demo sites to a large number of replicators? The most crucial part of our replication strategy is the interactive approach that we have designed and that we call the CITYFIED Replication Model. The reason why we try to make it as interactive as possible is that we believe that replication is as much about the conditions and the potential of the expected uptakers of the CITYFIED technologies and results as what is actually happening at the demo sites. And in order to address this and assist the cities to explore their replication potential, we have designed an interactive model where we engage the experts in the CITYFIED consortium to work with new potential cases in the replication cities. The approach of the CITYFIED replication model consists of both technical and non-technical aspects and use both quantitative and qualitative methods, all with the purpose to put focus on the replicator and get them to learn as much about their own potential. This model we deploy in 11 city districts in the cities that take part in our CITYFIED city cluster. And as an aim of this, we hope that we will provide them with good information for them to do their own district energy retrofit plans for the future. The replication model that we have designed is deployed in these 11 cities by 4 steps. The first step is to guide the cities to find their own CITYFIED type of district. With this we mean that they are to search for a district that have high resemblance with any one of the CITYFIED demo sites. With this we mean that they need to find a district where there is a common building typology within the district, both in terms of how the building look like and how they are constructed, but also in terms of ownership of the building and climatic conditions. And as a second step of this process, we assist the cities in identifying their barriers and possibilities, the non-technological part of having replication. This we do by assisting them with a framework for interviews and workshop methodologies where they can engage their selected stakeholders in the cities that they will need to work with in order to have real replication. In this framework, we discuss non-technological barriers such as financial, organizational, social, and cultural barriers, and hopefully also inspires them to find solutions on how to overcome them in long term. The third step is where we engage the technological experts within our consortium. This is where we engage the energy modelers and trying to show the actual potential of the energy saving measures that are deployed in the demo sites. With putting up a virtual model of the current energy use and situation in the district of the city's choice, we can show how much energy is used today, where is the leakage of this energy, where is it lost, and where is there a potential to have an intervention of having with high environmental benefits. In this step, we can put numbers on the actually energy saving potential of the districts and give suggestions on suitable technical interventions from the demo sites. And this is to aid the cities to go further in their own planning of district interventions. As a fourth and final step, we also like to help the cities to explore their potential business models in order for this to actually happen in the future. This is done firstly by investigating the knowledge and the perceptions of business models within the cities. What are they working with today? What are they familiar with? And what are they willing to explore in order to find new solutions, both in terms of business models and financing models? All these steps together, added together, then gives the cities input to create their own district energy retrofitting plan that they will hopefully have benefit of in the future. CITYFIED is now entering the third year of the project, and we have been able to start deploying this replication model in some of our cities. And we have identified already that it is possible to find. There exist several CITYFIED districts in Europe. The cities are able to find districts of similarity to the demo sites where there can be actual potential for replication. However, what we also have discovered is that data gathering and energy simulation is challenging for all buildings. There is great data lag, and this takes a lot of energy and commitment from the cities to find the right data in order for us to put numbers on the potential. There is also high variation in the perceptions among stakeholders on what actually is a business model and how do we work with it and what do we mean by these terms. When it comes to the non-technological discussions, we have also identified that the financial barriers are the most reoccurring. But the potential solutions in these cities, of course, they differ according to ownership and social structure of the district. With this all together, we have drawn the conclusion that there is a promising potential for replication in these 11 cities. But it is challenging to get a common understanding between the CITYFIED consortium partners and the cities in order for them to actually benefit from what we have created in the project. In addition to the replication model, we also have within the replication scope a dissemination approach for the cities. Also, this dissemination scope is very interactive, where we invite the cities to actively participate in social media, in taking part in webinars, in training sessions. They are invited to study visits for both the demo sites and also visiting each other within the city cluster. This is what we do to have them highly committed throughout the whole project and hopefully beyond. Apart from the interactive part of the dissemination, we also develop, of course, information packages of what is actually done in the demo sites in order to have this spread towards these cities. This together, the dissemination scope and the replication model will eventually form our replication plan. This is actually what we hope that will stretch beyond the scope of the project. As we see it now, this is still in development, but as we see it now, it will become a handbook for municipalities and other stakeholders on how both to use the replication model of CITYFIED, but also, of course, the results of the CITYFIED demo sites. The handbook will cover the replication, exploitation, and dissemination scope of CITYFIED, with the CITYFIED information packages of what have been done at the demo sites, the model for evaluation of CITYFIED replication potential, but also all the lessons learned from deploying it in these 11 cities, transferred into a CITYFIED district approach guidelines, when, where, and how to deploy the replication model. And with this, sorry, I skipped all the way into SINFONIA. And with this, we hope that we have assured replication already within the project scope, but also set the conditions of having replication beyond. CITYFIED project.
Super. Thank you very much, Jeanette. It's quite a complete approach coming from CITYFIED with that baseline of a building resemblance, but with all of the other accompanying measures that you're giving to the cluster city in particular. I'm sure that we'll be able to explore that further in the Q&A session at the end. In the meantime, I'm going to move right ahead, and another project that's been very impressive at having this extended network and reaching out to cities and giving them some tools and insight and giving them the confidence to tackle these measures themselves, it has been the SINFONIA project. And we're pleased to have Karine Laffont from Technoffi with us to tell us a little bit more.
Yeah. Hello everyone. So my name is Karine Laffont. I work for Technoffi, which is a French consulting company dedicated to innovation management. So I'm a SINFONIA project manager in my company, and Technoffi is leading a work package dedicated to scalability and replicability. SINFONIA is an FP7 funded project. We started 2 years ago for a duration of 5 years, so still 3 years ahead of us. And we have a consortium of 25 partners. The objective of the project is to deploy large-scale, integrated, and replicable energy solutions in mid-sized European cities. So that's the scope of the project. It's mid-sized European cities. Replication is, of course, at the heart of the project, and a large part of the activities is dedicated to the transferability and the scalabilities of the solutions that are deployed in the 2 pioneer districts. So the 2 demo cities in SINFONIA are Innsbruck and Bolzano, which are in Austria and Italy respectively. So I have to play with my animation, sorry for that. These 2 demo cities will deploy refurbishment solutions that are integrated at district level and which address 3 components. First, the buildings, then the district heating, and finally the electricity network. So all this integrated within the district. With regard to building refurbishment, a total of 100,000 square meters will be retrofitted, and the tested solutions include envelope retrofitting with ethics, the change of heating and domestic hot water systems, new ventilation systems, and PV panels and solar thermal installations will also be integrated. The district heating network will be optimized in Bolzano, and additional renewable energy sources will be integrated in both Bolzano and Innsbruck. As regards the electricity network, smart points will be deployed in Bolzano. These smart points will provide intelligent public lighting, also with new services for mobility and the charging of electric cars and bicycles, for example. In Innsbruck, a local smart grid will be tested. Beyond the 2 pilot cities, 5 cities called early adopters are active partners in SINFONIA. These early adopter cities are Borås in Sweden, La Rochelle in France, Rosenheim in Germany, Sevilla in Spain, and Paphos in Cyprus. So we have various types of climates and culture and regulatory regimes that are represented in the project. Then SINFONIA, jointly with the EU Google, which is another EU-funded project, have also set up a large replication cluster that you can see here on the map. This cluster includes, for the time being, more than 40 cities, which are located all around Europe. So these cities, they are not partners as such of the project, but they can participate to dedicated replication events, they can visit the demonstration sites, they can ask for their refurbishment plans to be reviewed by other partners, and so on. So the plan is really to involve them in the project. So how do we address replication in Sinfonia? So no. Okay. So sorry, the animation went very fast, so I don't hope that you were able to see it. But well, what we would like to demonstrate with this project is that the district is the right scale of replication. So to start with, the project is demonstrating a set of solutions that are, let's say, isolated, but still integrated within a specific district. We'll then estimate the impact of scaling up these individual solutions to the whole district, which implies identifying the scaling up rules and the potential economies of scale. For example, if several similar buildings, could be social housing to start with, are retrofitted during the same operation, it will be possible to lower the costs. This is the approach that has been implemented by the Energiesprong program in the Netherlands, for example. The next step is to assess the potential for replication in other similar districts in Innsbruck and Bolzano. However, these other districts will probably not have exactly the same characteristics or priorities. So this time it's not just scaling up, and we'll have to fine-tune the actions that have been carried out in the pilot districts. So we'll start investigate replication within the cities themselves. So once the potential for replication is estimated in the two demo cities, we'll validate the approach with the early adopter cities, and we'll elaborate with them replication plans for the specific districts that decide to target. What we would like to do is, well, similar to what's being done in CITYFIED, is that the early adopter cities target districts that have a similar typology than the districts that have been investigated in Innsbruck and Bolzano. So in the case of the early adopter cities, the challenges are that the technical solutions used in Innsbruck and Bolzano may not be adapted. For example, the climate in Paphos and Seville are so different from the climate in Innsbruck and Bolzano that we don't expect the building refurbishment solutions to be working there. And also, some of the solutions deployed in Innsbruck and Bolzano for district heating will not be replicable in cities where the settings of the energy systems are different. But there are a set of best practices and lessons learned and other technical solutions that can be replicated, and we will focus on that. The regulations and culture will also have a strong influence on the replication potential, and so we'll have to be, let's say, smart in addressing these issues, and we'll have to develop guidelines for replication, and the way we will handle the business model will, of course, be a critical point. So we'll start working on that in the coming months, so we should have a lot more to say on this topic next year, actually. So looking forward to doing this presentation again in a year. Finally, good practices and lessons learned will be disseminated to the replication cluster. So this will lead to recommendations in the form of district templates. So what do we mean by district templates? It's a set of recommended refurbishment solutions, both technical solutions but also business models for each type of district that has been encountered in Sinfonia. So for those of you who are familiar with the Tabula project, we would like to start developing a Tabula-like database, but at district scale instead of building scale. So it means we'll start working on a database with different kinds of types of districts, typology of districts, and for this, each of these type of districts will define what could be the best solutions, expected impact depending on the climate, and suggested business models. To guide and facilitate replication, Sinfonia is also developing tools, both qualitative and quantitative. The first tool is an online self-assessment tool, and it addresses the non-technological part of replication. This tool, which is called the SWOT tool, like as in strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats, enable city administration to identify potential opportunities and difficulties for the implementation of a smart city project. The user has to answer a set of yes/no questions and can then interpret the results on how the found drivers can be used to overcome the identified barriers, which is illustrated here. The user can also ask for support and guidance to check that the assessment is done properly. So the tool is available online, so you can find it with the link that's written here. So please feel free to have a look and try it. The second tool is a decision support tool for district refurbishment with quantitative outputs to simulate the potential for replication. So here we are more dealing with the technological part of replication. It promotes a new way of planning. Sorry, I've lost my animation on the way. Okay. So it promotes a new way of planning city refurbishment, where energy saving is one of the main decision driver. And of course, with a focus on the district scale, since we want to use this tool to validate the district template approach. It also promotes a collective approach because it requires datasets coming from different technical services of the cities and also other actors such as energy utilities. As it was highlighted before by Jeanette, the data collection process is key. So in the SINFONIA project, we provide support to gather the various datasets and to pre-process them. In case data are missing, which happens most of the time, or unavailable because of confidentiality issues, for example, the tool uses simulations and a statistical approach to estimate this data. But of course, this means that the results will be less accurate. Once the datasets are ready for analysis, the user defines several options for district refurbishment, and the tool will simulate the impacts of these plans and then compare the associated impacts using a set of key performance indicators, such as CO2 emissions, total investment, the payback time, so all kind of high-level KPIs, but also more technical indicators to illustrate, for example, the load curve during a typical day in summer or in winter, and this kind of information. These tools are now being tested with 2 pilot cities and will then be validated with the early adopter cities. So we'll work together with these 5 early adopter cities to develop plausible district refurbishment plans, replicating what's been done in Innsbruck and Bolzano. We'll also work together on finding the best business models, since they heavily depend on local conditions, so we'll work with them on a case-by-case basis, and this is probably a key aspect of the project. If successful, the tools and the approach will be disseminated to the replication cluster and beyond. But for this to work out, again, access to data is key. And if we want to have a good estimation of the potential of replication in other EU cities, the access to the data characterizing the city, its district, buildings, population, the consumption patterns, and so on is critical. But the replication potential is, of course, also highly dependent on non-technical factors that we are just trying to investigate in SINFONIA through the district template approach. So we are looking forward to working on that challenging topic in the 3 years that are left in the project. Thank you.
Great. Thank you very much, Karine. Again, a very complete technical and non-technical outreach for all of the possible cities and districts that interact with your project. And I'm sure that we're going to be able to explore some of those now with our expert challenger, Mariangiola Fabbri from the BPIE. That's the Building Performance Institute Europe, and they're really on top of a whole host of excellent knowledge and analysis and roadmaps for the sector in this field, but also active in projects themselves, so I'm sure that Mariangiola will have a few questions and comments that we can all relate to and explore some of the issues. And I'm going to hand over to her just now. So over to you, our expert challenger.
Thank you very much, Alec. Thank you for the invitation, and thank you to the two presenters. For those who do not know BPIE, we are an independent not-for-profit think tank working with all the full range of stakeholders, from decision makers to industry. Both in Brussels, where we are based, so we do take care and monitor the implementation of European legislation related to building performance. And at the same time, we do work closely with member states to monitor the implementation of the legislation on the ground, and really in order to understand what are the barriers and what are the opportunities and for increasing building performance. So that being said, I do have plenty of questions actually for the two presenters, but I will just focus on three, and they won't be very technical, but I think it's very, very important in order to understand replicability to really think very, very clearly beforehand before entering such a big endeavors, and on how one may want and need to tackle all the different challenges and opportunities, especially when dealing with cities. So the first question I have is, what would be the main driver for a city to get involved in projects like this? Because it does seem a lot of work that needs to be done, and both projects mentioned that they rely heavily on data, and I would guess that most of these data would have to be provided by the cities or someone who's in close links to them. So the first question would be, why would they get involved into this type of project? And the second question is, how do you manage to maintain the same level of commitment over time when there are a lot of changes on a city level in case of municipal elections, or change of mayors, change of city councils, so priorities might change, visions may change, and your project is still ongoing. So what is the time frame, and how do you keep these cities involved during the project, and do you have a plan to do that afterwards? And my third question, which I think it's also possibly the most important one, is how do you measure your progress, and how do you measure success for these projects? So there is always a difference between theory and reality, and I'm aware, as you mentioned, that these two projects are still ongoing, so you're not at the end of those. But how would you manage? How would you measure, and how would you show that both of these projects would be successful in the end? So these are my questions, and the floor is yours again.
Okay, I might start there. Jeanette from IVL, representing CITYFIED. So the first question, why do the cities join this project? I think that if they do, what we can offer them is, of course, for them to avoid risks ahead. To get to know, I mean, there's a lot of exploring here. There are old buildings. You don't know what really you are supposed to find. Are you getting the data that you need, etc.? And there's a lot of lessons learned from the demo sites here. So that's about them shortening the road for themselves to have own retrofitting projects. And of course, if they take it on properly, they can avoid risks both technical risk and financial risk of learning what others have done. And I also think that a lot of these cities, they benefit from being in this community, of having discussions, of learning how to increase, because as you say, it's very challenging to keep their commitment over time. And of course there are cities joining us, but there are also, those cities are represented by individuals. And these individuals are very often committed person who wants this happening in their own environment. And what they can have from us is arguments and facts and numbers and tools on how to push this issue within their own city. And so it's very much about having a dissemination approach, a replication approach that targets individuals. And that is, of course, knowing who they are, what are they representing, and giving them the right tool for the right person. They can be different experts from different cities. And if you don't give them, if you don't know who you're talking with, it's easy not to give them the right tool, and then you will not have that long-term commitment. But of course, I mean, this is challenging to keep it over time, both within the project period, but especially when the project has ended. But if we get individual commitment, and they can in their turn get their own cities behind them to commit through these ambassadors in these cities, I think that we have a better chance to have activities over time. And how do we measure results then? Well, one of our milestones was that we created this community, that we actually have 50 cities now in our community. I think that is a performance criteria in itself, that we actually could get so many cities to sign for this project that are listening to us. And of course, the more we get them active in the activities that we offer them, that is also a way to show that they are listening to what we are saying. And if we also can actually provide them with good replication plans for their own cities, I think that is a progress in itself. But I agree with you that it will be very difficult. This replication, the retrofitting of these cities, this is a long-term process. It's very much dependent on political processes within the different cities. Even if we can provide them with good theoretical components during this project, I don't see, if maybe they will be a short time within the project period to actually see if they're going to be new CITYFIED cases all over Europe, because that is actually what you would like to see. But I think the time frame would be too short of that. So I think that you would have to go for a more qualitative approach, assessing the progress, doing interviews and asking how many stakeholders actually that have been involved in the project, and see how many ambassadors have we created when this project has ended. And I give the word to Karine.
Thank you, Jeanette. It's hard for me to add anything interesting now. So with regard to the first question on the main driver for cities to get involved, I would say that, well, since more and more cities have ambitious targets to reduce their CO2 emissions and energy consumptions, what both SINFONIA, CITYFIED, and also other projects offer is in line with these objectives. And the fact of being part of a European project also enables the cities to take the risk of testing new business models, maybe to be more ambitious at the business as usual. Also, what we see in SINFONIA is that cities and the other city players are keen to share lessons learned with other cities, and also that they are keen to have new tools to communicate on the potential of district refurbishment, especially the person we work with within the cities they need to convince the city decision makers. So for them, it's really important to have both quantitative and qualitative indicators to communicate them in, let's say, a sexy way to convince the higher levels within the cities that these projects and more globally energy refurbishment is a good opportunity for the city. With regard to the level of commitment, to be honest, it's hard to answer for the time being. I guess we'll see in the coming years. But most of the work, for most of the time, we work with the people at operational level. So for the moment, we are not too much conscious of potential hurdles and delays related, for example, to new elections. But of course, we'll have to work with these political processes, since it's the way a city functions. I mean, the political processes are part of the city life, and it's something we just have to mitigate by finding ways to maintain the same level of commitment over time. So it's also something we are experimenting in Sinfonia, and I think we'll have good lessons learned at the end of the project. Finally, how we measure progress or success. We are still in the process of defining project key performance indicators to measure the success. It's an important process because these KPIs, they have to satisfy the cities, all the partners, but also they should be relevant for other smart cities projects. So we have to check that what we do is consistent with the approach implemented by the other smart cities projects. And what Jeanette said, it's perfectly true that we can't have only quantitative indicators that are easy to measure. We'll also have a lot of qualitative indicators, and this will be more difficult to define. But to start with a first indicator, the level of involvement and of the early adopter cities and the replication cluster, what they get out of Sinfonia, will be a good one to start with, but how we measure it is something to investigate. Well, thank you.
Great. Mariangiola, thank you for exploring some of those issues. I think if I may, I might just ask one additional question, if that's all right with our challenger, is that this replication from a European project and resources to a city, have either of you or even yourself, Mariangiola, seen some successful replication happening within a city once you've given them these tools? Have they then created their own lighthouse using these city resources and then replicating that with a twin city or other cities in the region? So have you seen any replication at a more local and city level as a result of these projects and these resources? Or and that's open to anyone. Mariangiola.
Yes, I have to say I'm not aware, but it's because it's probably my lack of knowledge of any good replicability replicable project. I think, but I'm not sure these even if, and I'm sure they exist, but I don't think they're well documented. And this is probably because we tend, especially when dealing with European funded projects, which all very often initiate these pilots and these attempted innovation and really achieving results and concrete results, both at the city level but also sometimes at national levels. We do tend to focus on the project as such, and when it's over, it's over. There isn't a proper evaluation process that would most likely enabled to identify how far the results have gone since the original plan, and also how far beyond they went. If we had past evaluations for all these type of products, it would probably be much easier to identify which ones have been replicated both inside the same city or across different cities. I don't know whether probably Jeanette or Karine might know some concrete examples, but I think it's very difficult to identify. There's so many projects out there, but not one way to pinpoint the very successful ones, apart from self-promotion, I would say.
Well, the only example that comes to mind from my side, it's actually not from a European project, is the Energiesprong program in the Netherlands, which is now being duplicated in the UK and in France. And in France, it's being replicated through a EU-funded project. So then we'll see if that project leads to further replication in France, for example.
I can't say either that I know of an exact replicator of any concept from these type of test beds of projects. I think that's a common challenge for all these. They become silo projects in one way, and it's also to evaluate replication. It's difficult to say that the whole CITYFIED package will be replicated, but what I can say from looking at the Swedish demo site, I can say that there's a lot of other similar projects to this one happening in Lund in Sweden, where they have exactly the same challenges and they are looking for the same type of solutions. And as we put the spotlight on the case in Lund, we can have a very good discussion if this is the best way to go forward in all of these cases, and if there are other ways and measures, lessons learned here that we can share with the other Swedish cases that are not necessarily identified as replicators, but there's a general discussion here where the results from CITYFIED are taken into consideration. So the lessons learned in CITYFIED will be spread by so many channels that it's not necessarily the replication cities that maybe be the uptake. It might be someone else just listening and take it on, or just parts of it.
That's great. Thank you very much. I think we had a comment there that really partner cities and ambassadors and this kind of secondary uptake that is so difficult to track, as you said, Mariangiola, but I think Karine hit on it, that these projects are allowing people to work and test and maybe be a little bit more ambitious or risk-friendly and discover new tools. I think Karine said that for the SINFONIA project, that somewhere along the line it's definitely happening. We have just one last question in the chat here that we might be able to address before heading off. It's from Ord. Do you think that the replication tools developed by CITYFIED or SINFONIA can be used without the help of one of the project partners? I mean, do they stand alone, or shall the project partners consider offering their support, for instance, as a service to cities in their business? Is there any one of the presenters or?
Yeah, I can answer for SINFONIA. To be honest, the plan to start with was to develop a standalone tool, but then we realized that the data collection process is just so difficult that it's better to offer the tool as part of a service where we help the cities to collect all the data, to process it, to put it in the right way so that the tool can understand it, to mitigate the data gaps and all this type of issues. So indeed, as it appears in the question of Aude, the project partners in SINFONIA are now considering to offer support as a service to cities using these tools.
Great. Well, I think given the time, we will stop there. I'd like to say a huge thank you to our two presenters and to Mariangiola from BPIE for giving us some framework to explore these issues today. I know that there are lots of great insights and resources also on the BPIE website in terms of this, in how accelerating the renovation of building stocks in different countries, and some roadmaps, and so plenty of additional reading to explore there. So thank you very, very much, and that is the end of today's webinar and the end of our series during this Sustainable Energy Week.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you.